Canopy is an awesome tool if you are doing tax returns or tax representation, either way. What it allows you to do is pull transcripts from the IRS. They have an integration certified by the IRS to pull transcripts. What I love about it is I log in one time. I connect my e-services account and I can go into Canopy and pull transcripts. I don't have to continue to log into the e-services, put in my password, get my code, and get in and finally just get through e-services. It's so cumbersome. So I use Canopy. It's that one-time connection. Let me give you a couple tips. Number one, I like to pull transcripts for some of my clients who make estimated tax payments. Maybe they don't provide me a copy of the estimated tax payment. I want to make sure I know the correct dates of those estimated payments, okay? So I will go into Canopy, pull an account transcript for my client, and be able to see what dates they made their estimated payments. Just solves for a lot of problems. There's no notices. Maybe I thought they did $4,000 or $5,000 estimated payments when really they only did 3. They told me they did 4, they only did 3. A notice comes in because they didn't pay enough in tax, and now they're saying you did the tax return wrong. That happens all the time. So to eliminate that pain of that process and that, customer integration or customer experience, right? We want to eliminate notices at all costs. So that's one really key thing. The second one is when you're not sure if the client's given you all of their documents. Maybe there's a 1099-R that they had from the year before, and for whatever reason, they don't think they can find it. I can pull a wage and income transcript, pull down all that information. So at least I have the federal information on that 1099, if it's applicable, if they received one for that year. And it eliminates, again, the whole concept of notices. So I find it really important as I'm preparing tax returns to have this tool in place. And so I love using it. So as a tax preparer, those are a couple of tips how you can use Canopy in your practice. Thanks for listening. Okay, well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the DM Disruption. So excited to have Alicia Pollock on with me today. We have known each other for a wicked long time. So from New England, I can say wicked long time, but we've never really, and we agree, we've really not had a lot of time to spend together. Just us, as we go to conferences and everybody wants to talk. Where you were like, what is it, crossing in the night or something like that, or whatever it is. But I'm excited to have you on today, Alicia. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and you're out there educating and training and teaching, and you have just a passion for it. So tell everybody what you're up to.
Yeah, well, so my name is Alicia Katz Pollock, and my actual official job title is QBO Rockstar. And it's not just because I'm really good at QuickBooks, which I am, but I also play music as well. So,
cool. I didn't know that. What's your favorite instrument? What's your instrument of choice?
I play bass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Without the bass, we got nothing, by the way.
It's all about the bass. No
it's
trouble.
All about the bass. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I actually have a master's in teaching, and I started my career as a 7th grade English teacher. And that lasted literally about 6 months as a substitute teacher. And I realized that the kids were there because they had to be there. And, and when you're in 7th grade, it's all hormones and social and teaching, how to, Charles Dickens was the last thing that they cared about. And so I moved over to the GED program at a community college. And so I started teaching adults, because adults are there because they want to be there. They have a goal. They want to meet it. They might not know how, but they're motivated. And so I started teaching adults. And I've been a computer geek my whole life. When I was a kid, the very first, when the first home computers came out, my Apple II, my dad was a dentist, and his office was in our basement. And so I went down to the computer, and AppleWorks was the first database program. So I figured out how to use AppleWorks, and I created a database, and I took all of his paper records and I put them in the computer so that we could write, so that we could send postcards for their dental cleanings every 6 months. And so that was my first job at the age of 13, was programming a database.
That's so cool.
I've been a computer geek absolutely forever. And so, Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, I was teaching in business schools how to use comp apps. And I had a jewelry company, and I learned how to use QuickBooks for my jewelry company. And it just started dovetailing with all the computer stuff that I would sit down and do a computer consult, and people would say, well, what about the, can you help me with QuickBooks? And so I kind of got up to speed on it, and I started doing it, but I would run everything I did through a bookkeeper to make sure that I wasn't mucking them up. And she told me that actually not only was I doing a good job, but like my books were kind of bomb-proof. And so
Wow.
the QuickBooks part of my business just started growing and growing and growing to the point that I started handing off all of my Apple clients to my husband, who became my business partner. And that's when we formed RoyalWise. So now he does all the Apple consulting. We still do a little bit of Microsoft Office, but not so much. And now I'm QuickBooks 24, almost literally 24/7.
Oh my goodness. So you obviously, what a great experience. I think a lot of people who started to learn QuickBooks and became, amazing people like you who are out there teaching people had their own business, and they were just like, oh, I'm going to figure this out. And then they fell in love with that, as opposed to, well, you had a jewelry business, right? Do you still have that?
I sold it in 2015 because I couldn't do both of them.
Yeah. It's kind of like, okay, which direction am I going to go in? So now you have a passion for, of course, for teaching. You had a passion right from a long time ago, but now you have a passion for teaching people QuickBooks, and like you're doing that at like an exponential level. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'm a member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network, and I'm actually one of the national training teams. So if you go to qbtrainingevents.com and you take any of Intuit's trainings, I might be one of the presenters. I also might be one of the little elves behind the scenes typing madly to answer all of your questions. I'm a speaker at QuickBooks Connect, even coming up in November. So I've been a regular with them since 2015 and scaling new heights as well, although I'm not going this year. But what I bring to the table that is unique in the industry is that I'm a writer and a trainer. And so I have a book on Amazon that is actually my notes from my QBO book boot camp that I teach at RoyalWise.com. And so I built this entire training portal, not just like a webinar with some recordings, but I have like a whole organized QBO training system at RoyalWise.com. So
Awesome.
it's, got, learning paths, and there's over 40 videos. There's probably close to 100 hours of content. I've got memberships. I'm doing a boot camp right now. And then all of the books, I'm also writing books for Questiva Consulting for Doug Sleater's textbook, like the famous one that so many people learned how to do QuickBooks on. It fell to me to rewrite it and modernize it. So in 2020, I rewrote the desktop books, and I'm right now working on converting it to QBO. And this is like a 600-page textbook with step-by-step instructions and quizzes and like the whole 9 yards.
So that's awesome. So tell me, of course, so I'm all about motivation. What motivated you to like take that on? Now, kind of you said it fell in your lap, but what a monstrous project. Okay. I wrote a little book. It's little, really tiny. Felt like it took forever. You're writing like a manuscript of how to use QuickBooks. That's a big job.
It's like literally my magnum opus. It's like big book. It's like,
yes,
because I had this, the book that I wrote, I should grab a copy. The book that I wrote that's on Amazon, I did it in 2015, and it's about 200 pages, and it basically says, here's the feature, here's what it does. And this was actually originally my notes for teaching the class. So when I would teach the class, I had this PDF, and I was spending so much time like printing it out on my laser writer and hole punching it and putting in binders and handing them to students. I was like, I think I could publish on Amazon for cheaper than I'm paying for the binder. So I made it mass market, and it's actually like I'm waiting for the latest version to clear. It should be up by the time anybody watches this. The 2021 version should be up. And so, but like I would sit there with this, and it's like, well, I'm talking like it says create a sales receipt, but it's not saying click this, type this. Here's what you need to think about in this field. And so like I had this dream of writing the big book that had all the step-by-step instructions. And then Questiva approached me, and I'm like, Here's my chance. Yay, I get to do
That's, you know, and I'll tell you, in the Trainer Writer Network, which I'm one of the new member committee people, we really struggle finding people who want to write. And so I find it amazing. And so you love to teach and write, which is a rare combination, you know. It really is.
I mean, there's a lot of people out there making videos. I like to think that my presentation style is, you know, sets me apart from that. But I'm one of the few people putting pen to paper or keys to keyboard. And people think, well, books are dead. You know, why would you want something printed out? But the truth is if you're actually trying to look up something and learning how to do it, there's something to be said for having that paper in your hands.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah.
And so you're teaching this, are you primarily teaching like new QuickBooks users, bookkeepers that work for companies? Like, what do you find to be, or is it a mix?
It's totally a mix. I mean, I started with the business owners because I was doing the business consulting. And so the way I started teaching was the fact that I was like teaching the same thing to client after client after client. And I don't do bookkeeping. I'm not a bookkeeper. I'm doing the setups and the training and the troubleshooting and looking at a messy file and explaining to the business owner what they need to do differently. Like that's my favorite thing to do. And so my classes started as the business owners, not the bookkeepers. But of course, like QuickBooks is QuickBooks. There's certain things that bookkeepers need to know different
Right.
from business owners, but for the most part, it dovetails. And for a while, I had actually separated it out on my website. Like I have a membership program so that you can subscribe and get access to all of my content instead of buying it piecemeal. And up until for like the last 2 years, I've had a business owner track and a bookkeeper track. And I just decided we're doing a revamp. I'm like, you know, let's just bring it together. Other than QBOA, it's the same.
Right. It's just, you're doing the same thing. You're teaching a business owner or you're teaching a bookkeeper. They're both doing the same thing.
Right.
So now, how long have you had your site up, and how long have you been doing that part of training?
Yeah, we started the learning management system, what's called an LMS, back in 2017. So that's when I started building it. And then at that point, it was just like, okay, so I've got the core class. What don't I have? Okay, I need more about reports. I need more about payroll. I need more about all the new features coming out. So I have this thing I do. It's like, look what I found, where it's a free course where it's just like, here's receipt capture when it came out and tagging when it came out and mileage when it came out. And so I love like finding all the little nitty gritty things. Like that's my motivation is I'm using it and all of a sudden, bam, something new pops up. It's like, cool, let me go play with that now. So that's what I like.
And I bet you love the aha moment. I had one this morning. So like I've got probably 50 clients on QBO, at this point. So, obviously been working in QBO for a while, and it's that one thing that you find. So I'm just going to put myself out there. I'm vulnerable. Here it goes. This morning, I had a client asking me about an invoice, and I'm like, subtotal. How do I create a subtotal item? Because my brain is just always goes back to that desktop functionality, right? And I'm like, you idiot. It's right there in the lower left corner says add a subtotal. But, like those of us who have been the desktop loving humans that we've been for so long, you're just like, it's an item. Of course it's an item. No, it's not an item, but it's right there on the face of that sucker, right there staring you in the face.
Yeah, sales taxes aren't items, assemblies aren't items.
Right?
It's really different.
It's so different. And so I love when you, like you're saying, like when you teach someone, they're like, oh, now I get it. That's the stuff you love. And that's what you were looking for in those 7th graders who refused to give that back to you, right?
Those aha moments where like the light bulb, like, oh my God, that just changed everything for me. That's what I love.
And you're getting that reward. And it's so like, I do love working with the business owners, and you're just like, hey, what about this? What about that? I tend to bring my clients in, and I'm like, and like you said, you're not doing bookkeeping, but essentially you are. And I want to say that I really love the fact that you said, you know what, I'll work on these books. I'm going to train them, but then I'm going to run it by a bookkeeper, somebody who, kind of can see that full picture of things. And, I always talk about that. I had this one staff member who is still absolutely the best bookkeeper, in my opinion, in the country. Never went to high school, didn't go to college, but you know what? It didn't matter. She had a passion for wanting to make sure that business owners could read their reports and that they were accurate all the time. And so, you say you're not a bookkeeper, but at the end of the day, you're giving that same result. You're actually giving that result as opposed to the process, which I find like really awesome. And those aha moments where you're solving something that they just never even realized there was a solution for, And so I love that. So tell me, at some point in your life, right? And I've read your notes, right? But somebody motivated you or something that motivates you. And of course, I agree with you. When you get somebody who is like, oh, that's awesome, Brolin. Like, I get that now. It makes sense. That fills up your bucket, right? That fills your glass and says, okay, I'm doing this right. I'm helping this person. So you say, I believe it was your family, you said, which you said, oh, and everyone probably says that. Well, not everybody does say that. So tell me about that. Tell me about your family. How do they motivate you?
Well, I have, my family we call it the house of love, that my husband's and my commitment to each other was that we would have a house of love, that no matter what happens, that would be the founding principle. And I don't know if you've ever read The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
I have not.
But it talk about motivators. That book is absolutely amazing. It's like this thin. I think it's actually right up on this bookshelf. And it's kind of both our family Bible, and we give a copy to all of our employees. And the idea with the Four Agreements is that you're impeccable with your word. You don't make assumptions. You don't take things personally, and you always do your best. And so with those four guidelines, we can work anything out. And like, my kids are amazing people. That was our goal, was we wanted to raise good people. And so, we look at all the, so many of my kids' friends were like, oh my God. and ours are just awesome. I mean, they all have their moments, obviously.
Sure.
But they know that, where's mom? She's upstairs writing, or she's upstairs recording something. They know that I'm driven and motivated, and hopefully I'm motivating them to take that approach in thetheir lives as well.
I love that. And I was talking to Scott a little bit earlier, and this guy Scott, that he was on an earlier podcast, and we talked about how, like, I'm just surprised my kids are still alive, right? It's like they give them to you, they put them in this thing, and you put it in your car and you bring it home with you. And I'm like, you haven't even done a background check on me. Like, are you sure you want to let these humans come home with me?
We have licenses to drive cars. I think we should have parent licenses.
I mean, like, legit, right? And I think that that's fantastic, how you approach your relationship with your husband and how you approach your kids. And I guarantee you, and there's nothing more fulfilling than when a kid says to you, Mom, because my kids have said this to me, Mom, I just want you to know that I so respect your work ethic. The fact that you're out there, you work till, historically, I don't do it so much anymore, but, just work, because we're people pleasers. We want to do the things and we want to do them right, which I love that about what you said, right? And so how old are your kids?
13 and 15.
13 and 15. And they're at that age, we're going to call it that. And when you can say, people said this to me a lot, and I'm sure people are saying this to you. Oh, the teenage years. Oh man, how brutal was that? And I say, you know what? I enjoyed their teenage years. We had an open conversation, open relationship of, let's just always be honest with each other, always tell the truth. And you can live by that and be successful in anything you do if you can keep together those, characteristics.
It's really true. It all comes down to that foundation of trust.
Mm-hmm. And so what does your husband do in the partnership besides what he's told? That's what I tell people. What does your husband do? What he's told? Not really, but what is his role?
Jamie does the same thing that I do with Intuit, but he does it with Apple products, although he's not doing as much writing, but our whole website has a whole Apple section as well. So we have like another 50 videos on Macs, iPhones, iPads. And so he largely works with seniors just because, the people who grew up with it, but he helps your parents getting their technology because, it makes you crazy. Like, Mom, I told you that 6 times already. Jamie's the person who can tell it the next 6 times. And then when Jamie's not doing all of the Apple stuff, he's actually he's kind of like the mom in the family. He's the one who's helping the kids keep their heads on straight, and he's a gourmet cook. And so,
All right, you got that nailed down.
Yeah, exactly. So he does all the cooking, and I'm eternally grateful. I think it's more important than what I do.
Right? Oh, absolutely. Filling the belly is extremely important. And so if you were to look to 2 to 3 to 5 years down the road for Alicia, what is that going to look like for you? Now, obviously you love doing the training and the recording and the writing and things like that. But is there something like coming down that you're like, you know what, this is one thing. Let's just not even talk about like work. But if there was something that you said, you know what, 5 years from now, I'm going to make sure I'm doing X or I'm doing Z, like what would that be? What would that look like for you?
Well, I mean, on the work front, my goal is to take these textbooks that I'm writing and take them out of just the academic world and make them available to the mass market. So that's kind of my roadmap for like the next. It's probably going to take us 2 years to transform it, but you can buy the book on Amazon, and then you can go to my website and watch all the videos that go with the step-by-step instructions in the book. So like, that's my immediate plan. And so, finding a way from going like just me behind a desk to making this a whole training program and getting it out there so that, making this kind of mildly entertaining bookkeeping approach.
Right.
And getting that out there. So like professionally, that's what I want to be doing, is like, taking it as far as I can. On the personal side, continuing to play music and actually not just taking my lesson every week, but maybe other people hear me sometimes, would be nice. And of course I want to travel. I want to once my kids are out of the house, I want to buy an RV and drive around. And because if I'm going to be driving for 8 hours, I could be in the back doing some more writing while my husband drives, and travel as much as possible.
I love that. So as you're looking, and that's one of the greatest things about, if you think, I mean, you and I, like we're about, obviously we're about the same age. You're probably younger than me, but back when it wasn't so popular to be mobile, and now with the full ability and permission to be mobile, that's a perfect plan, because now you can work because you love what you do, right? Some people, I love what I do. I can give you an example. So I've been working on the civil audit, and this individual, let's just say he wasn't really transparent on his tax return as he should have been, right? He wasn't as honest as he should have been. And so when you get that, you get through something like that, and you can minimize their exposure by, getting the auditor what they need, doing the things you need to do. And then you get the letter that we finalized it, everything's good, we accept it, and we move on. And they don't open up other years. That to me is like, that's what drives me to want to continue, right? It's that success, that win, right? And so for you, your wins are getting these things published, getting them out in front of people, and certainly people subscribing to your website to be able to, and you see them progressing, you see them succeeding. And that's what you love to do. So I love that goal of mobility, because you already are mobile. We are all mobile already, but being able to take it and then, pull in something that's more personal, like traveling, right? And be able to do both. Best of both worlds. That's what I would call it, right?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I started using Zoom with my clients and stopping going on site back in 2017 when there was a snowstorm in Portland. We couldn't go anywhere. And so I'm like, technology is out there. And so I did my first screen share, back then. So then when COVID hit and everything got locked down in the beginning of 2020, actually one of the very, very first things that we did is my husband ran, Jamie, his name is Jamie. Jamie ran these Zoom trainings for all of our entire RoyalWise base. So like seniors, my business owners, everybody. And we literally had 80 people over 70 in two Zooms.
That's awesome.
It was adorable. So like you have that whole grid of all these people going like this, like, can they hear me? Okay, the mute button is in their lower left. Everybody look for a little microphone and click the mute. Okay, turn it off, turn it on. And it was so it was absolutely tremendous. And so because we were already doing training, this has actually been a boon for us, because now people are comfortable with going online and virtual training. And I've been doing in-person classes for years, rent
Right.
a classroom, bring everybody in, set up the projector. I had a green screen so that I could record it and all of that. And our production values have been able to go up hugely because now I'm in a sound studio. Like there's like foam on my walls.
Right.
Right.
I mean, it's a whole different world than it was just, and I see the biggest challenge I see are those that just they want to stop it. They don't want to do it. They don't want a part of it. And then there's those people where, like, I do a lot of training with firms to teach them how to get in the cloud and, do things electronically. And a lot of times that, one of their first things is, well, my older clients, they're not going to want to do that electronic thing.
No, they take
And
time.
I'm like, you know what? I get that. I totally get that. And I always tell people, I say, listen, I meet my clients where they are. If they're just not ready, then they're not ready. But I'm always still putting in their ear, hey, listen, you can really, let me just send this to you electronically while you're sitting in front of me and on your phone, because they all have phones. And let's see how that works. And that's what you're doing. You're meeting them where they are. You're helping them take those baby steps. And Alicia, honestly, teaching those older people, because of COVID last Christmas, you probably have positively affected how many people you think between those students, these elderly students who learned how to go on Zoom, were able to Zoom with their family during Christmas that they would have never been able to do before.
Absolutely. And the numbers, literally hundreds, that we've been helping seniors like know how to use their phones or buy iPads or buy computers. And we need t-shirts that say green share, blue share. That you click the green share button, you click the blue share button. I say that more than anything else.
Wow.
But we've been really grateful that we've been in this position where we can provide this support to people, because a lot of people would have been more lost if they couldn't meet with their loved ones. Or, we have a lot of clients in senior centers and that Jamie has to go meet outside, and they had no contact with their families. And so we know that we've been instrumental on keeping these people, mentally challenged.
Yeah.
Anyway, like in a way that they're being able to stay connected with the world. So,
that's amazing.
We've been in this position where we can have maximum assistance to people.
So have you thought of it in that context really before, that, hey, listen, we're actually keeping people more connected than they would have ever been? Imagine the pandemic 5 years ago. People weren't learning how to use Zoom. The loneliness we have now, imagine the exponential it would have been if we weren't able to do things like that, where you weren't being able to affect those people in such a deep way. Like, I didn't even really think of it when you first said that you guys were doing that. I didn't really think of it that way, but wow, what an impact. What an impact.
No, it's been huge. We've been really grateful for the position that we've been in through this big mess that the world is in, because my husband and I are already technological. My kids are already tech geeks. So homeschooling for them was no big deal. We didn't have any tech challenges, just other challenges that came along with it. But I'm just grateful that I've been in this position to have the maximum impact on people as we transition. And, I think there's some definite benefits to the fact that we are now able to work remotely. The amount of time that I spent driving from client to client to client, that's another 2 hours of productive time in my day.
Yeah. That's so true. It's so true. And it was interesting because historically, Alicia, as you have been and I have been trying to drag people, right? Come on, get into the 21st century. Join us as we move into a new way of work, a new way of living. And we were doing it before a pandemic happened. We were ready, so for those who weren't ready, I hope that they're getting it, figuring it out. We're not just saying it for nothing. We're saying it because it really matters, right?
Well, one of the things that's been really funny that's happened just in the last month or so is that my husband's been getting calls from some of his clients where their technology is getting too old. Because, I joke that computers age in double dog years, that 1 year in a computer life is 14 human years. So by the time your computer is 5 years old, it's 70, right? It's like getting ready to retire. And by the time it's 7 years old, it's 96. And it can barely do anything. It's very slow now. And so we've got people calling us because now they can't Zoom their operating systems are too old. And the computers that Jamie's replacing right now are actually the ones that I set up when I first started in the industry, because I started actually as an Apple consultant before I was doing QuickBooks. And so he's now replacing the computers that I set up for people like 10 years ago.
That's wild.
Isn't that wild?
It is wild.
Amazing. And we have this program called the Robin Hood program. We do everything with owls, so you can see my owls. And so our Robin Hood program is that when Jamie helps somebody get a new computer, he does the data transfer, and then we take the computer off of their hands and wipe it back to factory. And if it's still usable, we send it out to freecycle.com, and we just get the computers out into the community to people.
That's awesome. I do the same thing. I also, not only do I do that, as when we go to conferences and we get backpacks, sometimes you can leave with 3 or 4 backpacks from a conference, and I'll repurpose those. And when they have the back to school stuff, I have a friend of mine that locally organizes a backpack drive. And so we're able to repurpose them and give them back. And you're right. I had a couple computers last fall. I was like, here, find a couple kids who can use them, right?
Great. Yeah, we pass out old iPhones, we pass out old Macs, anything that we can get back out into the community.
I love that. I love that. Well, Alicia, this has been a great conversation. We always try to keep it within 20, 25 minutes so people will keep listening.
Okay.
But I
have one more thing that I need to add. As far as designated motivator goes, I was thinking back when my first QuickBooks Connect, which must have been like 2015, the very first presentation I went to was you.
Oh, really?
My very first accounting conference, my very first workshop was you. You were up on the stage. You had little squishies that you were chucking out into the audience, and candy. You were hooking at people. And
I love it.
And, it was incredibly entertaining as well as informative. But it was like stand-up comedy. And then I went for Laura Redmond, and hers was like throwing as much information at me as possible. And so those were my first 2 workshops. And I came out of those first 2 going, I can do this. I want to be on this stage. And so that's what I was like, okay, I got this. I can do this. And so I started hunting down Allison Ball and finding out how I can get involved.
Alicia, I love that. That's very humbling. Certainly to come into your first conference and then you got this psycho up there, I'm glad to hear it went well, but that's, and that's a lot of the things. Leslie Capichetti was my person. I went to an advanced QuickBooks, the first advanced QuickBooks training they had. It was local. I saw Leslie Capichetti, and I said, I want to do what you do. She gave me call this person, do this, do that. And that's how I started. And I love that myself and Laura Redmond could be that for you. And what the greatest part is, Alicia, you're being that for other people now. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing more rewarding than having people have success. And that you could be even just, if I could be an ounce of a part of that, then that's very humbling for me. So thank you for saying that. And I'm sure that you will have someone come up to you or chat through to you at QB Connect this year, right? Mm-hmm. That will say, Alicia, you were the first person I saw, and you were the reason why I wanted to do this, and you inspired me. So, and that's all we can do as colleagues, as peers. We're here to help each other. Yeah. And certainly, I really do appreciate your time. I also love owls. I think owls are amazing. And but we'll have links in the podcast to your website. So if you make sure you send that stuff over to Gaynor, because we want to promote what you're doing and support you in any way we can. And I'm sure I'll see you soon. It'll be in the next year at some kind of conference. And hopefully we can have a coffee and sit down face to face and catch up.
I will totally look forward to that.
I would love it. I love it. Alicia, again, thank you so much, everybody, for listening to DM Disruption. We'll see you back here next time. We're always looking for great people, so feel free to reach out if you want to come on the show. Great people like Alicia who's helping other people. Thanks again, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Alicia. You're awesome.
See you in class.
You got it. See you in class. Bye-bye.